Good morning, Canada. Rise and shine. Great to have you with us. I'm David Menzies, the Menzoid, your fearless warrior of wit, fighting back against the tyranny of political correctness. That's what we're all about, and this is Menzoid Mornings. We have another action-packed show for you this morning, folks, including... Oh, how can it be? The twisted relationship between our little homegrown Islamist terrorist, Omar Khadr, and his oh-so-friendly lawyer has come to an end. Is there an unspoken strategy to the native protests? Well, Paul McKeever of the Ontario Freedom Party, he has a unique perspective, and he's the man in the man cave this morning. And you won't want to miss this one, the big chill. Just how cold is it in Fargo, North Dakota these days? One local TV reporter uses a few props to demonstrate. Stay seated, folks. Coming up, is there an unspoken strategy to the native protesters? Paul McKeever of the Ontario Freedom Party has an interesting perspective, and he's the man in the man cave, and that's coming up next. Well, Superman's got his Fortress of Solitude, and Bruce Wayne, he's got the Batcave, and me, the Menzoid, I've got the Menzoid Man Cave, a place to sit back, relax, talk about the issues of the day. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to have in the Man Cave for the first time, Paul McKeever, head of the Freedom Party of Ontario. Welcome aboard, Paul.
Welcome to you, David. Thanks for having me on the show.
Always a pleasure. Now, Paul, tell me, natives have been in the news a lot lately. Yeah. The Teresa Spence hunger strike, really a liquid diet, the Idle No More protests. But of all the things that are being said and written about what's going on, I think you have a very interesting perspective on, I guess, the unspoken strategy of what this is really all about.
Yeah, you know, I was listening very carefully to what one of the main intellectual heads of this movement, Pam Palmater, had to say. She said that the Harper government has introduced a number of pieces of legislation, and they all have one thing in common: pushing aside, you know, communal rights, what she called communal rights, and bringing in individual rights, which she doesn't like. And so I had to look at the Indian Act. It's not my area of law, but I had to look at it. And what does it say? Effectively, it says every Indian reserve is like an island where nobody's allowed to own property, and all the decisions that get made about the use of that property is done by vote. So we have in Canada a number of these little communal or communist islands. And that's what she's really upset about. She's afraid that the Harper government is going to be getting rid of the communist nature of those reserves and turning it over to private ownership for the people who live there, so that Canadians who live on those reserves can actually own the property, sell the property, mine the property, what have you.
And wouldn't that be indeed a step in the right direction, Paul? The idea that once you've got skin in the game, suddenly maybe I care about my property's upkeep. I care about how my yard looks, because it's mine, it's not some communal thing. Wouldn't this be a positive aspect for how, you know, some of these reserves carry on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. And the thing is, there's a false thing going on here where they say, well, this will undermine our culture, our cultural practices. It doesn't. It simply says that you don't have to practice them at the point of a gun. The law doesn't force you to live in a collective. You can live in a collective voluntarily. And as you say, then you have that pride of ownership, the house upkeep. Maybe you're renting out. Maybe you have a triplex and you're renting out to other people. Yeah. So there is that. This is why, of course, all of the leftists are gathering behind Idle No More. They see these little islands, and there's hundreds of them throughout Canada, as sort of toeholds for their communist utopias. There's no chance in heck that they're ever going to go anywhere with this stuff, but they feel energized in their leftist cause by, you know, protecting what little bits of communism they can find in Canada.
You know, that is fascinating, Paul, because as you know, last Saturday here at Sun, we were hit with about 100 protesters of Idle No More. Ezra Levent did a fantastic piece, but one of the things that you notice is that where are the natives?
That's right.
I mean, most of them, from what we could tell, they're just the usual suspects from the Occupy movement, and this is their most recent hobby horse. And I guess that gives credence to your theory that this really, you know, isn't about native issues per se, but it's about their particular political ideology.
Yeah, and you'll notice that every time the police don't do something with people who are pushing around in Ezra Levant or painting on the walls of the Sun building or something like that, every time they don't enforce property rights, who wins?
Oh,
the left wins. There goes your property rights. The police are not enforcing property rights. That's the key thing to keep the, you know, everyone should keep their eye on that ball, because that's really what is behind all of this stuff. And keep in mind, this isn't a Harper agenda. This is actually an agenda introduced in 1969 by the Trudeau government, penned by Jean Chrétien. The 1969 policy paper said, get rid of the Indian Act, get rid of treaties, allow all Canadians to own property, even on those current reserve lands. Let's start treating everyone the same.
Paul, excellent question. How do you see this Idle No More movement, I guess, evolving or devolving, as the case may be? Do you see it much like Occupy, petering out, or is it a matter of we haven't seen the worst of the blockades and whatnot yet?
I think as soon as we see a bit of a thaw outside, we've got about 24 degrees below today. As soon as we see a thaw, we're going to see all those leftists, whether they belong to bands or not, out there waving native flags, saying it's Idle No More, because now it's about race. And they can say they're saving a race, a culture. You know, this is their grand vision of a national right to a national claim to communal living. And it's much more focused in the sense that now they can say it's everyone against the poor old guy who's defined under the Indian Act to be an Indian. It's racial. And as soon as you put race into the mix, like they're doing now, it becomes much more passionate, much more hot, much more divisive. The sides harden up, and it will become very hot. I'm actually quite worried about the spring.
Fantastic. Listen, Paul, happy to have you on the Man Cave. If you happen to become premier, will you come back on the Man Cave?
First stop.
Okay, thank you so much. We got that on tape. Thank you so much again, Paul McKeever of the Freedom Party of Ontario. And folks, keep it here to Menzoid Mornings. More to come right after this.